The great pay battle might be all over for primary school teachers, but principals are fighting on. They've rejected the latest government offer, holding out for pay parity with secondary principals and higher salaries for those at the helm of the smallest schools. Their union, the Educational Institute, says principals of schools with fewer than 100 children should be paid as much as those with between 100 and 150. Iona Holsted is the Secretary for Education and joins us now. Good evening.
Tēnā koe, Lisa.
One of the key questions here is a principal of a small school worth more than a teacher at a larger one? What do you think?
I think it's important to talk about leadership. So in the schooling sector in New Zealand, there's always been the notion of leadership, principalship leadership, but there's also distributed leadership. So across the whole system, there are a whole lot of teachers who carry leadership responsibilities but aren't principals. So the pay system has always allowed for that, and in the last few decades has paid units to those people who hold leadership roles. But having said that, in the main, principals do get paid more than teachers. But can I give you an example? Because you spoke to Carol Lynn earlier, I think.
Yes, correct.
And she referenced some figures she'd seen on a website, and I'm not entirely sure which website she was looking at, but let me just explain. She had, if she had accepted the offer, she would have gone from the 88,000 she's on now to between 100 and 109,000 in 3 years, right? So around a $15,000 pay increase for a principal with 27 students and 2 staff. By comparison, a teacher with leadership responsibilities in a large school, for example, 600 students, could be on 101,000. So these things are relative. They're just not relative necessarily in terms of positional.
So do they just have to suck it up? The principals of smaller schools, is that what you are saying, that they just need to accept they're a smaller school, they have less responsibility than perhaps a teacher who's in a management role in a larger school, and that is just the way it's going to be?
What I can tell you is that the pay system has forever been based on the numbers of students. I'm not saying that's necessarily the right basis for it, but that is how our system currently operates. And if we were to move away from that system, and the unions haven't invited us to do that, that would be a massive shift in the system. And that's something actually that over time would be really worth working on with the unions. And that's one of the reasons we set up this accord, because it gives us a place to have those big conversations.
If that's not on the table at the moment, how will you, under the current regime, how will you attract principals to those smaller, harder to staff areas, those little schools? Because we are being told that there is a leadership crisis in small schools. So how are you going to get them there unless you bump up their pay?
Well, we have bumped up their pay. And
because they don't like what's on the table, do they?
Sorry, let me finish. The offer that we have had made and has been rejected actually puts the smaller schools getting more money. So they get a 13% pay rise. And as I say, by the end of the contract, nobody will be getting paid less than $100,000.
I do understand that. Iona, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do understand that. The point is they have looked at that offer and they still say it's not enough.
So we've said there's 3 other aspects to the offer which are really important and which have hardly been touched on. The first is that immediately upon settlement, they get a $1,500 payment. And in every small school where previously there was only one principal and no teacher, we have guaranteed that we will pay for an additional full-time teacher aide so that those principals are not alone. Now, that was a significant issue raised by the union. They wanted more than that, but that was what we were able to give them.
Yeah, and they still want more. So is there any more money? Because they're fully aware of all these. They're fully aware of all these clauses that you were talking us through, but they've looked at them all and they don't like it. They want more. So are you going to find some more money for them?
No.
You said that before and you did find more money.
The more money that was found last time was to meet the pay parity issue on the basic scale, and the union was offered that, and it was clear at the time that that was all there was. Nothing has changed since then.
Isn't the problem that you kind of cried wolf? You said there was no money, then you found some, so now they expect you to do the same, find some more money.
They may well expect that, But what I'm telling you is that that's not what is on offer.
So what is the pay gap between primary and secondary principals at the moment? The union says it's about 2%. Do you think that's fair?
Well,
do you agree
I
with
haven't
that figure?
done that work, to be honest, because what we've agreed with the unions is that we will look through the accord at the extent to which a unified pay system relates to principals. And we've agreed, to the extent that it's possible outside of the contract, that it will be a matter for future discussion, and that's written down in hard letters.
And that's the problem for them, that it's a future discussion. So they're interested in the here and now. So what would it cost, that 2% gap? What would it cost you to close that right now?
I haven't got that figure on me.
Shouldn't you?
And I haven't
because of the fact that it's a sticking point?
No, because it's not an area that we're going to engage on. We can repackage within the envelope we have. And if we could find 2% within that package, then we could address it.
So you've got
we need to go back to the negotiating table to do that. I can't do that on radio.
Right. So there's no more money. You're not willing to close that pay gap immediately, and you think that they're getting the smaller principals of smaller schools. You think that you've done a good job with that pay offer. Stalemate, isn't it? That's it.
Well, I would invite the union to come back. Where do you see the way forward? Where do you see the way forward? Where is there some leeway here? Lisa, that is the purpose of negotiation, is to find the way forward. What I'm saying is...
Have you got any ideas where that is, though?
Yes, I do have, but those are things that I prefer to share with the union.
Could you not just share a small element of it with us?
No, I've no intentions of doing that, Lisa, and I'm sure you wouldn't expect me to.
OK, so when do you expect to get around the table with them?
Well, that's something we haven't discussed with the union yet, but I would imagine sometime next week.
All right. Appreciate your time this evening. That's Iona Holsted, who is the Secretary for Education there, talking about, the standoff really with the primary principals over their pay.